My name is Cole Bennett, 34 years old, former construction foreman, now a freelance renovator trying to rebuild more than just homes. I live in the suburbs of Prescott with my 5-year-old son Mason. Just the two of us most days. My wife Amanda, well, I guess I should still call her that. Technically, we're not divorced yet. But when someone leaves you in a burning house and pulls her ex out first, the paperwork starts to feel like a formality. It didn't start with fire. It started with silence. The kind that creeps into a marriage like smoke under a door. Slow, quiet, choking. Amanda used to be sunshine. Blonde curls, laugh like a melody, always 5 steps ahead of me. She could charm the manager at the car dealership into giving us a better rate, or turn PTA meetings into victory speeches. But over the last year, she became distant. Her eyes wandered during dinner. Her smile lingered too long on her phone screen, and she stopped checking if Mason brushed his teeth before bed. I thought it was stress. Her job as an interior designer was demanding, and she had her daughter Lila from a previous relationship. I loved Lila like my own. That's not just something I'm saying. I tucked her in every night, helped her with science fair projects, even taught her to ride a bike. Her real father, Brent, only showed up for birthdays or when he wanted to stir up chaos. He was the type of man who wore confidence like a cologne, cheap and overpowering. The night of the fire started like any other. Chaos. Lila had a tantrum because Amanda said no to a sleepover. Mason was already asleep upstairs. I had just finished sealing the cracks in the basement walls. Amanda had her wine and her phone. Brent had texted again, and I could see the name flashing across the screen like a warning sign. "You're not going to answer that?" I asked her quietly. She didn't even look up. "It's about Lila. He says he needs to talk." "At 10 at night?" "He's her father, Cole. I'm not going to ignore him when it concerns her." That was the last line of that conversation. I went to sleep on the couch, too tired to argue. The smoke alarm woke me. Thick black clouds had already filled the hallway. I leapt off the couch, coughing, disoriented. I yelled for Amanda. I yelled for Mason. My legs carried me upstairs without a plan, just instinct. I found Mason crying under the blanket, eyes wide and terrified. The fire was eating the stairwell by the time I got back down with him in my arms. And Amanda? She was outside, standing with Brent, Lila in her arms, sobbing. I banged on the window, Mason clutching me. I screamed for help. Amanda looked at me like I was a stranger. She didn't move. They said the fire started from faulty wiring in the basement. Some loose circuit tripped, a spark jumped insulation, and by the time it hit the support beam, it was too late. That's what the fire marshal's report claimed. Clean, cold. Words on paper. But there were things that report didn't explain, like how Amanda and Brent were already outside by the time I found Mason, or why the front door was wide open, with no sign of smoke damage in the entryway, like maybe someone knew. Mason and I spent 2 nights in the hospital. Smoke inhalation. The doctors said we were lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt betrayed. Amanda showed up the second morning, her hair pulled back, no makeup, red around the eyes. She didn't ask if we were okay. She just said, "I'm glad you're both alive." I stared at her. "You left us in there." Her mouth opened, then closed. She sat down stiffly on the chair beside the bed, one hand gripping the strap of her purse like it was a lifeline. "I didn't know you were still inside. I thought you got out. You grabbed Lila and Brent and ran." She looked away. "Brent was trying to get Lila out. I cut her off. So you followed him. You made a choice." Her voice cracked. "I had to save my daughter." I leaned forward, voice low, steady, too tired to yell. "And your son? You forgot you had one?" Silence. She didn't cry. That made it worse. I might have been able to forgive her if she broke down. But she stayed composed, distant. Like the fire had burned something inside her too, and whatever was left didn't include us. After she left the hospital room, Mason asked me, "Why didn't Mommy save us?" I didn't have an answer. I just told him, "I saved you, buddy. That's what matters." We didn't go back home. What was left of it was ash and blackened lumber. Insurance took weeks to process, and I couldn't afford a hotel long-term. So I rented a 1-bedroom unit behind a mechanic's shop. The wallpaper peeled. The shower whined like a dying animal. But Mason called it our adventure house, and that made it bearable. Then came the call. Amanda's attorney. Mr. Bennett, this is regarding temporary custody arrangements. Amanda is requesting full custody of Lila and joint custody of Mason during the rebuild period. I felt the world tilt under my feet. She left us in a burning house, and now she wants to share custody? She has a stable residence, sir, and you're living in what's classified as a temporary structure. The court may favor her position for Mason's stability. I hung up before I said something that would cost me later. Brent's car showed up outside Amanda's rental 3 nights later. I saw it. Sat in my truck across the street, engine off, hands trembling on the wheel. I watched him carry in groceries. I watched him laugh with Lila. I watched Amanda open the door for him like he belonged there. She hadn't just saved Brent and Lila. She brought him back into our lives, into my son's life. I finally understood. This wasn't just about a fire. This was about erasure. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I spent the next few days buried in paperwork, rental agreements, insurance documents, intake forms for Mason's new preschool. My hands were busy, but my mind kept circling back to the fire. And Amanda. It had been 2 weeks since the night I carried Mason out through smoke and flame. 2 weeks since I watched my wife cradle another man outside our burning home. The image was carved into my brain. Amanda's arms around Brent, Lila sobbing between them, and not once had she looked back. That's when I realized I needed help. Not for me, for Mason. I called Lauren. We hadn't spoken since my wedding. She was my sister, but we'd grown apart over the years. She'd always been the family rebel, moved out young, started her own art studio in another state. But she answered on the first ring. Cole? Hey, yeah, it's me. What happened? Her voice changed instantly, sharp with concern. There was a fire. Mason and I are okay. Amanda, she left us inside. The words felt surreal as I said them out loud. Lauren came the next day, bags in hand, attitude loaded. She hugged me hard and bent down to Mason's level, brushing a hand over his curls. You got taller, didn't you? She smiled. He nodded shyly. This is our adventure house. Lauren looked up at me. Your wife needs to be hit with something heavy. I was thinking legal documents, I muttered. She stayed with us for 3 nights, cleaned the bathroom, helped reorganize the kitchen, cooked meals like she was trying to make up for every missed holiday. On the 4th morning, while Mason was at preschool, we sat on the tiny back porch with coffee mugs in silence. She's not stupid, Lauren said finally. No, she's not. She wouldn't just leave you to die without a reason. You think she had a reason? Lauren looked straight at me. I think Brent's not just back in the picture. I think he's been in it for a while. That hit harder than I expected. I checked her phone once, months ago, I admitted. She'd been texting him. I asked. She said it was just about Lila. Lauren arched a brow. And you believed her? I wanted to. We sat for a long moment. Then she leaned forward. Have you thought about whether the fire was set? The question hung in the air like smoke. Yes, I said quietly. But I have no proof. The marshal said it was wiring. Can you get a copy of the report? Already did. Lauren's eyes narrowed. Then we find someone who can read it better than we can. That night, I reached out to an old friend, Miles Perry. He used to work in construction safety before he moved into private inspection. We'd lost touch after I left the company, but when I called, he answered like no time had passed. You need me to look at something? He asked. Yeah, a fire report, my house. You'll see the name on the document. He paused. Jesus, Cole. I saw something about that in the paper. It doesn't add up, and I think she's trying to take Mason. Miles exhaled slowly. Send it over. I'll look at it tonight. The following afternoon, I got a text. We need to talk, in person. I met him at a diner on the edge of town. Miles looked older, gray at the temples, a deeper line between his brows, but his eyes were the same, sharp, focused. He slid the report across the table. They missed something. I leaned in. There was no sign of an initial spark near the circuit box. In fact, there's no sign of electrical flash at all. What there is, He tapped the paper. Is a strange burn pattern along the stairwell wall. It looks like an accelerant. Like gasoline? Something flammable, yeah. But subtle. Probably liquid-based. Could have been staged to make it look like an accident. My stomach dropped. Cole, I'm not saying she did it. But this wasn't a freak wiring issue. I nodded slowly. And if she knew the fire was going to start, she could have gotten the people she cared about out first. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I watched Mason dream, tiny fists curled into the blankets, chest rising and falling in soft rhythm. I remembered how small he looked in my arms that night, how close I came to losing him. I wasn't just fighting for custody anymore. I was fighting to prove I wasn't crazy, that what happened wasn't some tragic accident, but a betrayal so deep it scorched everything in its path, and I had just taken my first step into uncovering the truth. I went back to the house, what was left of it anyway. The roof had caved in. The second floor collapsed onto the first like a broken spine. Charred beams jutted up from the debris like ribs. The place was surrounded by yellow tape, but I wasn't there to touch anything. I needed to see, to feel, to remember. Lauren waited in the truck. She didn't ask questions, just watched me as I walked the blackened path through what had once been our living room. I stood on the edge of the foundation, breathing in ash, imagining Mason's small body tucked against mine as we'd tried to find a way out. Amanda had never set foot back here, not once. That said more to me than any words ever could. Back at the rental, I started digging. Old receipts, bank statements, email records, anything I had access to. I wasn't a tech expert, but I had a pretty good memory, and Amanda had a habit of forwarding herself receipts for her projects. One caught my eye. A purchase made 6 days before the fire. Industrial-grade cleaning solvent. High flammability. Bought in cash from a supply store 3 towns over. It wasn't proof, but it was a thread. I printed everything and handed it to Lauren. You still know that guy? The one who helps abused victims build legal cases? She nodded. Yeah. Trevor. Why? Ask him if he knows someone who can dig deeper. Someone with teeth. Lauren didn't press. She just made the call. Meanwhile, Mason started drawing pictures of the fire. At first it was just scribbles, black clouds and stick figures. But then he drew one with detail. Our house, me holding him, Amanda outside, and Brent next to her, smiling. I stared at the paper like it had slapped me. Did Mommy and Brent come get you? I asked softly. Mason shook his head. They ran. You came back for me. I kissed the top of his head, holding the tremble in my chest. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was reprogramming. Amanda was rewriting the story in real time, shaping Mason's memory before it could root in truth. The next week I got served. Temporary hearing. Custody review. Amanda had hired a firm. Harrison, Lowell, and Trent. Big money. I couldn't compete with that. But I could fight with the truth. I brought everything to Miles. He examined the solvent receipt, compared it with the fire pattern, then looked up at me with a new kind of tension in his eyes. Cole, this wasn't sloppiness. This was staged. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. I rubbed my forehead. Can you testify to that? He hesitated. Not officially. I'm not a certified fire investigator, but I can help you find one. That night, I finally called Amanda. She picked up after 3 rings. Cole, you filed for temporary custody. Yes. Mason needs stability. You're living in a garage. Brent's living with you. She paused. That's not relevant. The hell it isn't. Lila needs her father, and Mason sees that. He deserves a complete family. I nearly crushed the phone in my fist. Complete? You left our family in a burning house. Her voice grew colder. I did what I had to do. You're trying to punish me for protecting my children. Our child, Amanda. Mason is our child. Silence. Then she whispered, You always were dramatic. I hung up before I said what I really thought. Lauren found a name. A retired investigator named Donald Avery, used to consult for the State Fire Bureau before he went private. I drove 2 hours to meet him in person. He was in his 70s, sharp as a scalpel, with a limp from a warehouse explosion he'd survived decades ago. He read the report, studied the photos, asked for my theory. I think someone poured an accelerant along the stairwell. I think Amanda knew it was coming, and I think she got out who she wanted to save. He didn't react, just nodded slowly. I've seen cleaner jobs, he said. But yeah, you've got something here. You'll need a judge willing to listen. I left him with a copy of the report and evidence. As I drove back, it hit me, how far I was willing to go, how deep I was already buried. Amanda wasn't just erasing me, she was replacing me, and Mason's future depended on whether I could prove she had set fire to more than just our home dot. The custody hearing was scheduled for Thursday, a temporary ruling, but one that could tip the scales for good. I had less than a week to prove that Amanda wasn't just a cold mother, she was dangerous. I met with Donald Avery again on Monday. He handed me a folder, photos, annotations, expert summaries, all meticulously prepared. This is what you bring to your lawyer, he said. If she pushes for full custody, you push back with this. It's circumstantial, yes, but compelling. Judges notice patterns. I thanked him and left with the weight of that folder pressing against my chest like a second heart. I drove straight to Lauren's apartment, where she had arranged a meeting with a family law attorney named Brenda Harker. Brenda was in her 40s, no nonsense, and looked like she'd shredded more affidavits than anyone had dared count. She read the summary, flipped through the report, and looked up at me. This isn't a slam dunk. I don't need a slam dunk. I need to keep my son. She studied me for a second longer, then nodded. You'll testify? Yes. Can your expert witness be present? Donald's ready. Then we fight. We spent the next 2 days gathering everything. Mason's drawings, the receipt for the solvent, the email Amanda sent to herself with a list of household flammables titled Materials for Storage Relocation. It didn't prove intent, but it added context. Brenda said the word courts liked for that kind of pattern was concerning. Wednesday night, I found Mason on the floor with Lauren, building a Lego fire truck. Who's driving? She asked. Mason pointed at a little figure. Daddy. I crouched beside him. Why's Daddy driving the truck? Because he came to save me, Mason said simply. Like before. I glanced at Lauren, whose throat visibly tightened. That quiet truth from a child meant more to me than any legal argument ever could. Amanda showed up to court in pearls and grief, dressed like a woman mourning the life I had broken, not the one she abandoned. Brent was there too, not in the room, but in the hallway, near Lila, who sat on a bench playing a tablet game. The message was clear. They were a package deal now. Brenda whispered to me, keep your answers short, keep your tone level, let her hang herself if she overplays. I nodded. Then the session began. Amanda's lawyer spoke first, calm, precise. Miss Bennett wishes only for the best interest of both children. Her home is stable, structured, and familiar. Mr. Bennett's residence is temporary. His financial records show irregular income. There have also been concerning behavioral shifts, including erratic communication and the suggestion of stalking behavior. I stiffened. Brenda leaned close. They're trying to discredit your stability. Breathe. Then Amanda took the stand. Tell us about the night of the fire, her attorney prompted. She clasped her hands like she was about to pray. The fire spread so fast, I panicked. Brent had come over that night to drop off medicine for Lila. She'd had a fever. When the alarm went off, he grabbed her and I followed. I thought Cole was already outside. You never turned back? Her lip trembled. I thought he was safe. I swear I did. She looked straight at me then and I saw it, the act. Her eyes full of glassy regret, her mouth trembling just enough. She had practiced this. But when Brenda brought up the solvent, Amanda's mask cracked. That purchase was for work, she said quickly. We were cleaning mold in an old house. Brenda raised an eyebrow. Which house? Was that invoice filed through your company? Amanda's eyes darted. It was a side project. I didn't keep the receipt. And the fire marshal found no trace of mold-related materials. What they did find was a concentrated burn line from stairwell to entry. Are you aware that our expert believes an accelerant was used? Amanda shifted in her seat. That's ridiculous. Is it also ridiculous that you had been in frequent contact with your ex-partner in the weeks before the fire? Or that he was present the night it happened? Amanda's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Brenda pressed harder. And now he's living in your home? That's not relevant, Your Honor. Brenda turned to the judge. We argue that Miss Bennett has attempted to rebuild a home with her previous partner, using her son as a piece of that reconstruction, all while marginalizing his biological father and jeopardizing the child's safety. Amanda finally snapped. He's just bitter. He's obsessed with painting me as a monster because he can't control me anymore. The courtroom went quiet. Even her lawyer looked stunned. Brenda stood calmly. Thank you, Miss Bennett. No further questions. I didn't smile, but inside I felt the first flicker of hope since that night. The judge didn't give a ruling right then. It would take a few days. But I knew Amanda had made a mistake. She let the mask slip. Outside the courtroom, I passed Brent. He didn't speak, just stared, smug, daring me to do something. You think this is over? I said under my breath. His grin widened. Oh, it's just getting started. The waiting was worse than the hearing itself. 3 days of silence from the court. 3 days of holding my breath every time the phone rang or an email pinged. I barely slept. My mind ran loops, Mason's drawings, Amanda's outburst on the stand, Brent's smirk in the hallway. I couldn't stop seeing it all over again. Lauren tried to distract me with things that didn't work. Old sitcoms, takeout, puzzles. She meant well, but nothing could drown the knot tightening in my chest. Even Mason noticed. You're sad, he said one morning while brushing his teeth. I knelt beside him. Yeah, buddy, a little. He rinsed and looked at me. Did I do something bad? My heart cracked. No, never. You're the best thing in my whole life. He nodded like he understood, even if he didn't. On the fourth morning, Brenda called. You got joint custody, she said without preamble. The judge is ordering a 6-month review period. You'll have Mason 5 days a week. Amanda gets weekends, split holidays. She pushed for more, but her courtroom behavior didn't help. I sat in silence, stunned. Relief and rage mixed in my chest like oil and fire. She's going to come after you, Brenda warned. That outburst? That wasn't the end of it. She'll try another angle. She already is, I said. Because that same day, Amanda showed up at Mason's preschool. She wasn't scheduled to pick him up. I got a call from the front desk. I drove there like my tires were on fire. When I got inside, Mason was holding her hand, confused, backpack dangling off one arm. What are you doing here? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Amanda smiled. Just wanted to surprise him. I miss my son. He's not a toy you get to borrow when you're bored. She crouched beside Mason. Why don't you go show Miss Lydia your robot drawing, honey? When he was out of earshot, her smile dropped. You think you've won? I don't need to win. I just need to protect him. Amanda's eyes narrowed. You're going to exhaust yourself trying to play the hero. Eventually, even Mason will see who you really are. I stepped closer. He already does. That's why he called out my name in the fire. She flinched. Then she turned and walked away without another word. Later that night, Brent called me. I didn't even know he had my number. You think Amanda's the problem? He said without greeting. She's trying to keep it civil. I'm the one who's not. I sat down, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. What do you want? To let you know what's coming. You embarrassed her. She's not letting that slide. She did that to herself. She has friends, resources. You've got a leaky ceiling and a part-time job. How long do you really think you can keep this up? I didn't answer. I'll be there when she files again, he added. Next time, with a better lawyer and a better story. Click. That night I stared at the ceiling, watching the water stain above my bed grow darker with every drip. Brent was right about one thing. I didn't have power, not the kind Amanda could buy with a few phone calls. But I had something she didn't. Truth. And a memory of a boy I held through smoke and fire. Still, the pressure was getting to me. I snapped at Lauren the next day over nothing. I forgot to pack Mason's lunch and had to drive it over mid-morning. When I got home, I stared at the couch for an hour before realizing I hadn't moved. I wasn't breaking down. I was burning out, and Amanda was counting on it. Later that week, I got a package in the mail, no return address. Inside was a manila envelope, photos, taken from outside Mason's school, from behind bushes, through car windows. Me holding his hand. Me buckling him into the back seat. Me hugging him goodbye. A sticky note on top read, "You're not the only one watching." I took it straight to the police. They were polite, concerned, took a statement, but they couldn't do anything without knowing who sent it. Brenda said we'd include it in the next filing. A pattern of intimidation. A message meant to destabilize me. It was working. Even Mason noticed. "Daddy, why are we locking the doors so much?" "Just keeping us safe," I said. He accepted that. But I could tell he felt it too. That something ugly was waiting around the corner. And Amanda was no longer just fighting for custody. She was fighting for control of everything. I started logging everything, every call, every strange car parked near Mason's school, every unexpected knock on the door. I made a file, labeled it threat log, and emailed a backup to Lauren nightly. If something happened to me, I wanted someone to know where to start. It was a paranoid habit, maybe. But paranoia wasn't the same as being wrong. Lauren insisted I install a security camera out front, cheap one, motion detected, synced to my phone. It wasn't much, but it made me feel like I wasn't completely defenseless. The first footage came in the second night. Someone in a hoodie, walking slowly past the apartment around 3 in the morning, paused, looked up, stayed still for almost 30 seconds, then walked away. I reported it, of course. The police logged it. But without a license plate or a face, it was just suspicious activity, which meant nothing. Mason was starting to have nightmares again. I heard him crying softly in the middle of the night and found him curled up in a ball, whispering something I couldn't understand. I held him until he calmed down. "Were you dreaming about the fire?" I asked. He nodded. "Was I there?" He looked at me, eyes wet. "You were trying to find the door." I clenched my jaw, keeping the scream in my throat. The next morning, I took him out of preschool early and we spent the afternoon at a children's museum, just the two of us, laughing, exploring. I let him touch every exhibit. I didn't check my phone once. I needed to remember who I was fighting for. Not the judge, not the court, not Amanda, Mason. Later that evening, Lauren pulled me aside. "You're sinking," she said. "I'm surviving." "Barely. You haven't been to a doctor. You're barely eating. You can't do this alone forever." "I don't have a choice." "You do. There are support programs, legal aid, parent groups, therapy. Cole, you're not the only person who's ever fought this kind of war." I sat in silence. She was right. The next day, I went to the community center. They had a free fathers advocacy program, weekly support groups, legal advisors. A woman named Joanne ran the desk, mid-50s, warm eyes, zero tolerance for self-pity. I told her everything. Not all at once, but over 3 visits. She helped me register for supervised visitation tracking, helped document Brent's unexpected appearances, helped file a complaint about Amanda's unauthorized pickup attempt. Nothing that would win the war, but little victories, paper cuts. Joanne also gave me a card, a counselor, male, veteran, specializing in trauma recovery for parents. I went. It wasn't magic. It wasn't even comfortable, but I talked. For the first time, I said it aloud. "I think she meant for that fire to happen." The counselor didn't blink. "What makes you think that?" "She saved him, not us." He leaned forward. "That's not what I asked." I swallowed. Because she looked calm when I saw her outside, like it wasn't a surprise. The room was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's something we can work with." Meanwhile, I started to dig. Brent had no official lease in Amanda's home, but a private investigator Joanne recommended found his name on 2 separate package deliveries and 1 recent utility bill. He was effectively living there without declaring residency. That mattered. Amanda had painted herself as the primary guardian of a stable household. Brent's undeclared presence, especially given his history, could shatter that illusion. I called Brenda. "We need to file a motion to reassess Amanda's household environment," I said. "You've got the evidence?" "I've got names, dates, addresses, documents." And you're ready for what comes next? Yeah. There was a pause. Then let's drag the mask off her. That night, I tucked Mason into bed and lingered by the door. Daddy? He whispered. Yeah, buddy? When we get our new house, can it have stars on the ceiling? Yeah, absolutely. Even if Mommy gets mad? I froze. Why would Mommy get mad? He was quiet. Then, she said we weren't supposed to talk about you too much. I came over and sat on the edge of the bed. You can always talk about me, okay? He nodded, snuggled into the blanket. My fists were clenched again, but not in fear. This time it was resolve. Amanda had manipulated our son's emotions. She'd tried to erase me. She'd tried to scare me into silence. But she forgot something crucial. Fires don't just destroy. They purify. The response came fast. 3 days after Brenda submitted the motion to the court, Amanda filed a counterclaim, alleging emotional abuse. Not against Mason, against her. The paperwork landed like a grenade. Amanda accused me of coercive behavior, surveillance, and public defamation. She claimed the fire investigation was part of a campaign of harassment, and that my efforts to expose her were psychologically abusive and retaliatory in nature. Brenda's eyes narrowed as she read the stack. She's trying to flip the script, she said. Paint herself as the victim. This is a decoy, meant to stall, intimidate, and get you back in front of a judge on her terms. But can it work? Brenda sighed. Unfortunately, yes. If she's persuasive, she can muddy the water. Enough that the court may put further restrictions in place. Maybe even supervised visitation until it's resolved. I felt my stomach twist. We have proof that Brent's living there, that she manipulated Mason. Yes, but courts don't run on truth alone. They run on narrative. And Amanda was a master of narrative. The new hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Brent came knocking. Literally. He showed up at the garage apartment late one night. Lauren wasn't home. Mason was already asleep. I opened the door and found him standing there, arms crossed, smile lazy. What do you want? I asked. He held up a small sealed envelope. Amanda wanted me to deliver this personally. I didn't take it. He set it on the ground instead, then leaned in, lowering his voice. You really should know when to quit, Cole. You're making her look bad. She is bad. He laughed. You keep saying that. Doesn't make it true. Get off my property. He didn't move. She's going to win, not because she's right, but because she knows how to play this game. You're still hoping justice has a conscience. It doesn't. It has procedure, and she owns it. I stepped forward. I said leave. He finally backed up, hands in the air like I'd pulled a gun. You think Mason's going to thank you for this? For dragging it all through court? For showing up to school one day with a social worker standing next to him? He walked away. I didn't touch the envelope. I turned it into Joanne at the advocacy center the next morning. She had it scanned, logged, and documented. It was a photo, Amanda standing with Mason, smiling, taken outside his preschool. On the back, a note in handwriting I recognized. The more you push, the more you lose. Joanne shook her head. She's escalating. This crosses into coercion. We added it to the motion. That week, Mason started having stomach aches. The doctor said it was stress. Nightmares returned. His teacher mentioned he'd stopped drawing pictures and was becoming withdrawn in class. It broke me. I think she's talking to him, I told the counselor. She's trying to reframe the fire. She's probably telling him it wasn't her fault, that I'm lying. He doesn't know what to believe anymore. Then help him build his truth, the counselor said. Routine, reassurance, keep showing up. That's the only way a child learns to separate lies from love. So that's what I did. I made every day predictable. I kept his bedtime story the same. We started drawing together again. I showed him pictures of the two of us from before, camping, his first Halloween, building our first birdhouse. One night, he pointed at a photo of the three of us, Amanda, him, and me. Were we happy? He asked. I swallowed. Yeah, once. He looked up. Why did Mommy save Lila and Brent? My hands froze. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I would have given anything to save you. He nodded. Didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. At the hearing, Amanda came in softer than last time. No pearls, no rigid posture. She wore a sweater, let her hair hang loose. She played the part of the vulnerable mother, the one under siege from a vengeful ex. Her lawyer leaned into the narrative. Miss Bennett has faced continuous pressure, unfounded accusations, and emotional stress due to Mr. Bennett's relentless campaign to destroy her reputation. Brenda rose like ice rising from still water. Mr. Bennett has documented each interaction, and while Miss Bennett has claimed emotional abuse, we submit into evidence a pattern of behavior intended to manipulate, intimidate, and isolate their son from his father. She handed over the photo, the surveillance logs, and the declaration from Mason's preschool counselor about his recent emotional withdrawal, coinciding with Amanda's unscheduled pickups and private conversations with the child. Amanda didn't speak, but Brent shifted uncomfortably in the gallery. The judge reviewed everything in silence, then said, "This court does not find sufficient grounds to alter the current custody arrangement. However, it strongly recommends both parties attend co-parenting counseling and refrain from unscheduled school visits." Amanda's mouth twitched. Brenda leaned close to me. She didn't get what she wanted. "No," I whispered. "But she's not done trying." Outside, Amanda brushed past me. No words, but Brent lagged behind. "You're on borrowed time," he hissed. I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Then I'll spend it wisely." The first co-parenting session took place in a beige room with too many chairs, the kind of space that smelled like stale coffee and quiet regret. Amanda walked in 5 minutes late. She didn't look at me. She sat with her arms folded, jaw set, lips tight. The therapist, Dr. Hazel, glanced between us. "Thank you both for being here. I understand this isn't easy." Amanda exhaled through her nose. "I'm here because I was ordered to be. And I'm here because I want our son to have peace," I said without flinching. The doctor gave a nod. "Then let's talk about what that looks like, for Mason." I didn't say anything more. Amanda did. "He's been confused lately," she said, "withdrawn. He doesn't want to leave my house when it's Cole's turn. That's a red flag." "I've logged every pickup," I replied. "He hugs me, smiles, talks about his day." "Because you train him to," she snapped. Dr. Hazel raised a hand. "Let's avoid accusations." Amanda shifted. "All I want is for Mason to have a safe environment." "Then stop telling him I abandoned him," I said, "because he's smart enough to remember who was inside the fire with him." Her face went blank, cold, but something behind her eyes flickered. Dr. Hazel scribbled something in her notepad. The session ended with forced civility. Amanda left quickly. I stayed behind. "She's used to control," I told Dr. Hazel. "This is the first time she's not in charge." The doctor nodded. "Document everything." I already was. Back home, I installed a second camera. Joanne helped me set up a secure cloud backup. Brent's late-night visits had stopped, for now. But I didn't trust silence from people who had something to hide. A week later, something strange happened. A story broke. Small local site. Community newsletter kind of thing. But it had teeth. Allegations of custody manipulation surface in heated parental dispute. It didn't name Amanda, or me. But the description, interior designer, suburban house fire, accusations of psychological control, was unmistakable to anyone who knew us. Lauren found it first. "You didn't leak this?" she asked. "No." "Well, someone did." We spent the afternoon wondering who. Brenda swore she hadn't. Joanne hadn't either. It didn't matter. The story spread. A few days later, Amanda's employer quietly removed her profile from the company website. She wasn't fired, but she was put on leave, and the whispers started to catch fire the same way our home once had. Then came the email. From Amanda. Subject line: "We need to talk. No text. Just a phone number." Brenda advised against it. "She's baiting you," Lauren agreed, but I called anyway. She picked up immediately. "Cole." Her voice was different, not angry, not smug, just tired. "What do you want?" I asked. "This is getting out of hand. You lit the match. I made mistakes, but you turned it into a campaign." I laughed bitterly. You filed the abuse claim. She sighed. And it didn't work. Fine, but we can still end this quietly. You want full custody? We can discuss it. That caught me off guard. You'd give up Mason? No, but I don't want this dragged out. I don't want to lose Lila, too. There it was. Lila, the center of Amanda's world, always had been. Brent's leaving, she added after a pause. What? He doesn't want the heat. He's already packed a bag. I didn't respond. You won, Amanda said softly. But it's going to feel like losing. You'll be stuck raising Mason while everyone looks at you like you're the monster who tore a family apart. I clenched my jaw. I didn't tear it apart. I pulled my son from the rubble you walked away from. Silence. Then she hung up. I didn't call back. That night, Mason drew a picture. It was of a house, our old one, blackened windows, smoke rising. But in front of it were two stick figures, one tall, one small, both smiling. Is that us? I asked. He nodded. We're safe now. Amanda didn't call back. Not after that night. No follow-up, no paperwork, no more sudden visits to the preschool. Her silence wasn't peace, it was retreat. But even retreats leave behind wreckage. Joanne called me 2 days later. She's out, she said. Her attorney officially filed notice that she's suspending her pursuit of shared custody. I didn't know how to feel. Relief, obviously, but also something quieter, something sad. Because in a better world, Amanda would have fought for Mason the right way. In a better world, she would have never left us in that fire to begin with. Brenda warned me not to let my guard down. She might stay quiet, or she might be reloading. Get your paperwork in order. File for primary custody and visitation control. Now. I did, but the war felt over. It wasn't a victory parade. It was a funeral march. Lauren and I sat on the back porch that night, sharing a drink under a sky smeared with faint stars. She's gone quiet, she said. For now. You won. I looked out over the edge of the lawn. No, I just stopped losing. She nodded. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Maybe build something again. The next morning, Mason woke up and asked, Are we still in the adventure house? I smiled. For a little longer. He sat up. Can we go see the old house? I hesitated. It's just ashes now. He tilted his head. But I want to say goodbye. So we did. I called the fire department. Got access clearance. Drove us out to the lot that used to be our home. It looked smaller now. Burned, overgrown, forgotten. Mason stood near the edge of the debris, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just knelt down and placed the dinosaur in the ash, then stood up and took my hand. I'm done, he said. And somehow, that felt like the final chapter of something bigger than a house. That afternoon, I met with Donald Avery again. He had updates, official ones. I found trace elements of the same cleaning agent in 3 different spots: upstairs hall, stairwell, and back exit. You were right to suspect it wasn't random. I nodded slowly. Will the DA take the case? Probably not. Too old, too circumstantial. But in a civil case, she wouldn't stand a chance. I'm not pressing charges. You sure? Yeah. He stared at me. You're letting her off easy. I'm not doing it for her. He nodded once. You're one of the few men I've met who made it out the other side of something like this without becoming bitter. I didn't tell him I still was bitter. I just didn't want to live there anymore. Back home, Mason and I cooked dinner together. He spilled flour everywhere, tried to crack an egg and got more shell than yolk, but he laughed, and that was everything. I got an email later that night. From Amanda. Just one sentence. I hope you teach him how to forget me. I didn't respond. Some wounds don't get answers. They just get time. The following week, I put down a deposit on a new place. Still modest, still small, but it had a real yard, a room just for Mason, a garden patch in the back he could help me dig. Lauren helped us move in. Joanne brought a basket of books for Mason and tools for me. Brenda sent a framed photo of a phoenix. I hung it over the fireplace. We were home, not just because it had walls and windows, but because no one could take it from us again. Peace didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. A day with no lawyer emails. A week with no night terrors. A quiet Sunday spent planting carrots in the backyard with Mason while he told me all about dinosaurs as if the world hadn't just burned around us. But even peace has echoes. One night, while folding Mason's clothes, I found an old photo tucked in the bottom of his drawer. A printout, cheap and creased. Amanda holding Mason at the zoo. He was younger, 2, maybe 3. He'd written something on the back in pencil. "Don't forget her." My hands shook. He hadn't mentioned Amanda in weeks. He no longer cried for her at night. He no longer asked why she didn't call, but he hadn't forgotten. And maybe he shouldn't have to. That weekend we visited Lauren. She'd been part of our foundation for so long it felt strange not to see her every other day. She had new projects going, a gallery opening soon, and a boyfriend she wasn't quite calling a boyfriend yet. She watched Mason run through her apartment like a storm in socks. "He's lighter," she said. "Yeah, so are you." I didn't answer. Later, when Mason was asleep on her couch, she asked, "You ever think about what you'll say to him when he's older?" I stared at the boy who had somehow survived all of it without fully understanding any of it. "I think about it every day. And? I'll tell him the truth, but I'll tell it like a bruise, not a wound. Something that hurt, but healed." She nodded. "He'll respect that." That night on the drive home, I asked Mason if he wanted to talk about her. He thought for a second, then shook his head. "Not yet." "That's okay," I said, but I knew the time would come. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten, no return address, Amanda's script. Inside was a single page. "Cole, I know silence isn't forgiveness, but it is surrender. I was angry at the world for taking things from me. Lila's father, my career, the version of life I thought I was owed. But the truth is, I gave it away. Every time I picked a lie over love. Every time I held on to what I thought was power, instead of what was real. You and Mason were real. You saved him when I didn't. You carried him through fire while I looked for someone else to blame. I don't expect grace, but I wanted you to know I see it now. Amanda." I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I folded it, sealed it in an envelope, and put it in Mason's memory box. Not to give now, but for later. When questions come, as they always do. The final court documents came a week later. Full custody confirmed. Visitation allowed, but only at Cole's discretion. No more surprise pickups, no more manipulation. Joanne called to congratulate me. "So, what now?" she asked. "I think we get a dog," I said. She laughed. "I meant long term." Same answer. And we did. A mutt from the shelter. Big ears, bad breath, the gentlest soul you could ask for. Mason named him Sparky. We built a doghouse together, painted it green. Our new home had laughter in its walls now. And every so often, I'd hear Mason giggle in his room, and I'd remember that once, I thought I might lose him forever. One morning, he climbed into bed with me, pulled the blanket over us both, and said, "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you didn't let go." I closed my eyes. I never will. There's a kind of silence that's comforting, the kind that settles in over a warm dinner, or fills the air when you're watching cartoons on a lazy Saturday morning. That was the kind of quiet our house had now. Not tension, just time. Mason started first grade in September. I walked him to class every day, even when he insisted he was too grown up. We decorated his notebook together, packed his lunch, and practiced sight words in the evening with dog hair stuck to everything. His teachers said he was adjusting well. He smiled easily, helped other kids. He was curious, focused, a little too obsessed with dinosaurs. But what 6-year-old isn't? One night, he asked me if we could go see Lila. The question caught me off guard. He hadn't brought her up in months. "She was my sister," he said, "for a little bit." "Yeah," I said, "she was." "Do you think she misses me?" I looked into his eyes and saw something there I hadn't seen since before the fire. Gentleness. The kind that kids don't always get to keep. "I think she remembers you," I said. "And I think that matters." He nodded. Didn't ask more. Later, I emailed Lauren. She still had a few connections in Amanda's social circles. I wasn't looking to reopen anything, but I wanted to know if Lila was okay. I didn't need Amanda's story, just hers. Lauren called back a day later. "She's fine," she said. "Living with Amanda's parents now. Amanda moved out of state. Colorado, maybe. No forwarding address. No social media. Just gone." I didn't know what to feel. Amanda disappearing sounded like a gift, but something about the finality of it. It felt like a story without an ending. A week later, I received a call from an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something in me said to pick up. It was Amanda's father. We hadn't spoken since the wedding. "Cole," he said stiffly. "Sir, I heard about the court ruling. I know Amanda didn't tell you herself, but we support it, for what it's worth." I waited. "She's not well," he continued. "She's getting help, finally. It's not public and it's not perfect, but she's trying. I thought you should know that." I didn't know what to say. Lila's doing well, but if Mason ever wants to see her or write to her, we're open to that. No Amanda, just family. My throat tightened. "Thank you." He cleared his throat. "You were always a better man than she knew how to love." And then he hung up. I sat on the porch for a long time after that. Sparky curled up at my feet. Mason asleep inside. A better man than she knew how to love. It felt like a eulogy, and maybe it was. I didn't tell Mason that night. I didn't think he was ready. But one day, I'd share it all. With care. With truth. I wasn't afraid of the questions anymore. I'd spent so long trying to shield him from the fire, I hadn't realized he was already learning how to walk through smoke. That weekend we took a trip, just the two of us. No agenda, no plans, just a road map and a trunk full of snacks. We stopped in small towns, took silly photos, hiked a trail that ended in a lookout over a wide blue lake. Mason stood at the edge of the world and shouted into the wind. "I made it!" It echoed back. He looked at me. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," I said. "The world's listening." He smiled. "Let's tell it everything." October came with gold leaves and early sunsets. Mason wanted to be a dragon for Halloween, not a superhero, not a firefighter, a dragon. "Because dragons protect treasure," he said. "And what's your treasure?" I asked, tying his green tail on with duct tape. "You," he answered without blinking. It hit me harder than it should have. Later that night, as he slept off a sugar crash, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out Amanda's letter again. I hadn't touched it in over a month. I didn't reread it. I just held it, felt its weight in my hands. The woman who wrote this, she wasn't the same woman who left Mason and me in that fire. But she wasn't someone I could ever let back in either. Forgiveness isn't about reopening the door. Sometimes it's just choosing not to hold the key like a weapon anymore. That week, I brought Mason to a community center workshop on family stories. The kids made photo collages, built cardboard houses, and glued popsicle stick family trees together. When it was his turn to present, Mason stood up in front of a dozen squirming kids and held up a cutout photo of me and Sparky. "This is my family. My dad is really brave. He saved me. And our dog's name is Sparky. He's not very brave, but he tries." Everyone laughed. "And this," Mason continued, lifting a folded drawing, "is a picture of a house we don't live in anymore, but it made us stronger." I swallowed something thick in my throat. Later in the car, he turned to me. "Daddy, do I have to forget Mommy to be okay?" "No," I said, eyes on the road. "You just have to remember the parts that make you stronger." He thought about that. "Then I'll keep the zoo memory, and the pancakes." "Good choices," I said. Then came the part I didn't expect. "I want to write her a letter." I blinked. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "But you don't have to send it." He sat at the kitchen table with a marker and serious eyebrows. When he finished, he handed it to me. "Dear Mommy, I miss you a little. I don't know if you're sad or happy or somewhere cold. I'm okay now. I have a dog. I have a dad. I like my new school. I'm not mad, but I don't think I need you right now. If I do, I'll let you know." From Mason, I folded it, put it with Amanda's letter. Two truths, side by side. One from a woman learning regret, one from a boy learning strength. The next day, I called her father. "I'm not sending it," I said. "Not yet, but maybe someday." He understood. No pressure, just, "Thank you for letting him write it. Thank you for letting him write it." Letting. As if I had given permission, but it was the other way around. Mason had shown me that forgiving doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It just means choosing love as the ending, not pain. And maybe that was enough. A few days later, I received a package. No return label. Inside was a small canvas painting. Lila's name was signed in the corner. It was a watercolor of two dragons, one big, one small, standing in front of a burning house. But the flames weren't angry. They were bright, almost like light. Winter came early that year. Snow dusted the lawn before Thanksgiving, and Mason stood at the window in his pajamas, watching the flakes fall like a boy seeing magic for the first time. We built a snow fort. Sparky ruined it twice. We built it again. And then one morning, as I packed Mason's backpack for school, my phone rang. A Colorado number. I didn't answer right away. The voicemail that followed was brief. Quiet. "Hi, it's Amanda. I'm back for a few days. I'd like to talk. No pressure, just if you're open to it." No more, no less. I let the phone sit untouched for hours. It wasn't that I didn't know what to say. It was that I wasn't sure it mattered anymore. By evening, I'd listened to the message 3 more times. Each time I heard something new. Not guilt, not strategy, just something quieter, maybe real. I called Joanne. She listened, silent until I finished. "What do you want?" she asked me. "I don't know." "Then that's your answer. You don't owe her anything." "I'm not doing it for her." "Then who?" I paused. "Mason, me, both." She didn't argue. The next day I agreed to meet. A public park, neutral ground, winter bare trees casting long shadows across the picnic benches. She was already sitting when I arrived. Coat too thin, eyes too tired, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Amanda looked older, not just physically, but like someone who had finally stopped pretending to be someone else. She didn't rise when I approached. "Cole," she said softly. I nodded. Silence sat between us like a third person. Finally, she spoke. "I know I don't deserve your time." I didn't respond. She looked down at her hands. "I've been in therapy for almost 6 months. Real therapy, not something for appearances. They made me sit in my story. Made me walk through the fire again. Except this time, I wasn't running out of it." Still, I said nothing. She looked up. "I wanted you to hate me. It was easier than seeing myself the way you saw me. You left us," I said finally. "I know. You left him. I know." And to her credit, she didn't cry. She didn't explain. She just sat there, holding the truth like it had weight. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said. "And I'm not here to ask for Mason. I just wanted to tell you I see it now. All of it, the lies, the damage. The man I tried to ruin to protect the version of myself I couldn't face." I leaned back, the cold wood of the bench biting through my jacket. "Why now?" "Because it's the first time I'm strong enough not to make it about me." She handed me a sealed envelope. "I wrote him a letter, not to be sent, just for you to keep, for someday, or never." I took it. She stood slowly. "I won't contact you again, or Mason, not unless he asks. I promised myself that." As she turned, I said, "He remembered the pancakes." She paused. "And the zoo." She turned back slightly. "He remembered me? He remembers love, not the pain." Her breath caught, just for a second. Then she nodded and walked away. I watched her leave without looking back, and I didn't follow. That night, I sat on the floor of Mason's room while he slept, letter still unopened in my lap. Sparky curled at my feet, snoring softly. Outside, snow fell again. Gentler this time, covering everything in silence that didn't need to be filled. Spring arrived in small, hesitant steps. A robin landed on the fence post. The last frost melted. Tulip bulbs pushed through the dark soil like promises rising from grief. Mason and I planted them ourselves. He dug too deep. I didn't correct him. "Will they still grow?" he asked, watching me pat down the earth. They might surprise you, I said. That morning, I took Amanda's letter and placed it in Mason's memory box, behind his dragon drawing and next to the note he wrote but never sent. Not to hide, but to wait. Some things bloom only when they're ready. Weeks passed. Mason began talking more about Lila. He drew pictures of them flying kites, baking muffins, building forts, all invented memories, yet somehow truer than anything reality could have offered. One Sunday, he asked, "Do you think Lila remembers me?" "I think she does," I said. "I want to see her." It wasn't a demand, just a sentence filled with quiet longing. So I made the call. Amanda's parents were cautious, but kind. We arranged a playdate at a botanical garden, neutral ground. Lila had grown taller, but her laugh was the same. When she saw Mason, she ran to him without hesitation. They didn't ask about the fire, or Amanda. They just walked together between the tulips and koi ponds, speaking in that simple, sacred language of children who don't yet know what scars are supposed to mean. When it was time to leave, Lila hugged Mason tight. "Next time," she said, "bring your dog." Mason grinned. "Sparky doesn't like flowers, but maybe he'll like you." On the drive home, Mason sat quietly in the back seat, fingers brushing the condensation on the window. "Daddy?" he asked. "Yeah? Was Mommy sad when she left?" I took a breath. "Yes." "Were you?" I didn't answer right away. "Yes," I said again, "but I'm not anymore." He nodded, eyes still on the passing trees. "I think she was just lost." "She was," I said. "But being lost doesn't make you bad." He turned to me. "Then maybe she'll find her way." That night, I gave him the letter. He read it slowly. Once, then again. He didn't cry. He folded it and placed it back in the envelope. "I think she means it," he said. "I think so too." He handed it back to me. "Can you hold on to it a little longer?" "Of course." The next morning, he left a note on the fridge before school. "To Daddy, you are my fireman, but you didn't just carry me out. You helped me build a new house. I love you, Mason." I stood there for a long time, staring at the words until the sun lit them gold. And in that moment, I understood. This story wasn't about betrayal. It was about survival. It wasn't about what Amanda did wrong. It was about what we did right. I was never trying to burn her down. I was just trying to make sure Mason had something left to build on. Years from now, he'll tell this story in his own words. He'll remember dragons and snow forts and how his father never let go. That's enough. That's everything.